As usual, this meeting is being recorded, so anything said during the meeting will be in the public domain, and by taking part, you consent to the use of your personal data for the purpose of the meeting and to it being recorded. So, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding to welcome the Chairman and Vice Chairman of the Council.
Good evening, members. I would like to ask you to remain standing while my chaplain prayers.
So I want to begin by wishing you all a very happy Christmas and New Year. And I hope that you're on the good list and not the naughty list. Can we just bow our heads for a moment? So, Heavenly Father, at this time we remember that you through your Son showed us what love and servanthood is all about. And so we pray for this council. We thank you for each member, for their gifts and their talents, and their willingness to serve each other, to serve their communities and their neighbours. So we pray that this meeting may be a blessing. Amen. Thank you all very much. Have a lovely Christmas.
Thank you. Yes, please do be seated. Okay. I'd like to open the meeting at item 1 on the agenda. Do we have any priority business, Mr. Haywood?
Chairman, I can confirm there's no priority business this evening.
Thank you. Item 2, the minutes of the meeting of the council held on 8th of November 2022. They are before you tonight at page 1 of your pack. Is it your wish that I confirm and sign the minutes of the council meeting held on 8th of November 2022? Thank you very much. Item 3, are there any apologies, Mr. Haywood?
Yes, Chairman, we have a long list this evening. Councillors Merrick, Steele, Fisher, Bourke, Upton, Cope, Reid, Lawrence, Boyle, Adams, Hollis, Mike Davis, and Councillors Mrs Wilson, Mrs V Jackson, Mrs Kath Williams, and Mrs Hingley.
Thank you, Mr. Haywood. Item 4, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest this evening? I think not. Thank you very much, members. Item number 5, questions under Council Procedure Rule 11.4. Can I pass to Mr. Haywood?
There are none, Chairman, this evening.
Thank you again, Mr. Haywood. Item number 6, then, members. We now have the report of the Leader of the Council, which can be seen from page 3 onwards in your agenda pack. Can I call upon Councillor Lees to present his report?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members. I must start my report tonight with a glowing report that we've had from the peer review, and they have concluded we are a well-run and financially stable council and suggest a few tweaks around the edge to become excellent. Details will follow in the new year. This and winning the Council of the Year award shows South Staffordshire as a great place to live. Also to congratulate our finance team for being the first authority in the West Midlands to have their accounts for 21-22 signed off with another clean bill of health. Well done, team. Now turning to my portfolio partnerships. I'd like to update you on the asset plan. We have now appointed Programme Manager Keir to manage our programme of roof improvements and decorating works, which is the major work highlighted in the asset management plan for our commercial units. The reports have been received by officers who will be evaluating it in conjunction with Keir prior to Christmas and the New Year. Following the confirmation of our UK Shared Prosperity Fund allocation, officers are now looking to accelerate the instalment of PV panels and LED lighting at Landywood Enterprise Park. Redevelopment of Womben Enterprise Park is currently behind programme due to contractor delays completing phase 1 of the programme, which is the construction of 2 new commercial units at the rear of the site to house the 2 remaining tenants in the block, to be demolished. Phase 2 of the programme is to demolish the large old block and redevelop the new Lidl supermarket and up to 4 new retail units, which is largely cannot commence until these 2 units have relocated to the new units. However, our contractors have committed other phased work too, and not dependent on the demolition or erection of the retaining walls to demolish any delays in the programme. The original completion date is spring 23, and this has now slipped, although we do not yet have a new completion date, as that will be dependent on when the demolition can be commenced, which we hope will be early in the new year. That's the rest of the points I wish to highlight, and I'll take any questions if anybody's got any. There's no questions. Right, we'll move on to Mr. Mason then. Planning and Business Enterprises. Over to you, Terry.
Thank you. I haven't really got a lot to add to the report that's sitting in front of you. The consultation on the local plan finishes at 12 noon on Friday. Obviously, there's been a bit of a hiatus while all that's been going on, but I'm sure there'll be lots to discuss in the new year. And the only other item I'm drawing your attention to is the fact that we've updated the housing and homeless strategy, but that's dealt with later in this agenda. I don't really have anything else to add to that at the moment, so I'm happy to take any questions.
If there's no questions, we'll move on to regulatory services, and I'll ask Rita to present the regulatory services.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, officers and members. All relevant information is contained within this report, but as usual, there are a few items which I would like to highlight. It's reassuring to see that we have a broadly compliant rate of 95% against a target of 80% of food businesses rated. The team continue to follow the FSA's recovery plan requirements and further guidance which has been issued. Page 11, you can read about the visit undertaken by the FSA and one of our food safety officers to one of our large manufacturers. This was a good opportunity to showcase one of our businesses to the FSA. Vending machines. This is something which I have not reported on previously, and it makes for interesting reading with regards to this venture. The team have undertaken routine sampling to check the microbiological safety of the milk. Animal welfare. As stated in the report, officers have investigated 2 complaints in relation to dog boarding establishments licensed by ourselves. I don't intend to relate more details, as these can be found on page 12 of the report, but suffice to say that there will be monitoring and unannounced visits over the coming months to ensure compliance in relation to the second complaints. Environmental protection. Investigations in regards to odours, emissions to air, environmental permit inspections and noise monitoring have been undertaken, details of which are on page 12. Housing. Due to reports that a house occupied by an elderly gentleman and his son was in a very poor state of repair, the property was inspected by officers who then liaised with the landlord to compile a schedule of works for the repairs to be undertaken. Unfortunately, the slow progress of the remedial work resulted in the landlord being served with an improvement notice. Failure to comply with this would result in further formal action and potential prosecution. However, officers are now satisfied that the improvement notice has been complied with and that the property is now fit and safe for habitation. Licensing, processing and compliance. A list of this can be found on page 13. In addition, 60 visits were made to licensed premises in order to advise and assess compliance. Envirocrime. Unfortunately, fly tipping figures for October have increased in comparison with the same period last year. However, there is still an overall reduction in the total figures when compared to 2021. 235 less fly tips between January and October of this year. There are some ongoing investigations at present. 2 fly tipping and 1 littering case are with legal for prosecution, which will hopefully result in court proceedings. Unfortunately, the court system is extremely busy, and so therefore we are unable to confirm any timescale for court results. More details to be found on pages 26 and 27. Ends my report for regulatory services. Are there any questions?
Councillor Allen, please.
About the private rented housing that's been inspected, because I'm quite confident that this is not the only property in our area where the landlord is not meeting his obligations. Is there any way in which we can highlight this case and draw people's attention to it so that if there anyone else is in the same situation, they can have recourse to some action with the landlord?
We do carry out inspections, so this is something that's that is ongoing, but I say inspections are carried out.
Come back, please. Just to ask them, please, that this case is highlighted so that other people will know that there is a recourse to action. I wonder, Mr. Chairman, may I ask another question?
Please do.
Thank you. I just want to ask about the fly tipping, because we have been concerned that the charges at the tip are part of the concern that residents have for taking items to the tip. Are we still presenting to the County Council our concerns about the numbers of fly tipping and the way in which this is affecting our residents because they're not willing to pay for disposing of the waste legitimately? Thank you.
The charges, that's down to the County Council, but a lot of the fly tipping, it's not the sort of thing they would be charged for anyway. So it doesn't necessarily equate to what's being fly tipped.
If there's no further questions, we'll move on to business transformation on page 14. David Williamson.
Thank you, Leader, and good evening, members. Just to update you on a couple of points, the Council's annual Public Services Network review is underway, and an independent health check of the Council's cyber security defences has now been completed. These, together with the infrastructure and future development plans, have now been shared with the Cabinet Office as part of their annual review, and a confirmation of certification is expected soon. The planned cloud migration of the Council's application for supporting Council meetings has been completed as well, and has the data belonging to one of the Council's document and record management applications. Cloud technologies have been utilised to strengthen the Council's outer perimeter cyber defences, protecting the Council from more sophisticated cyber attacks and enabling follow-the-sun early warning notifications. Following an application to the Department for Levelling Up, I am pleased to say that the Council has been awarded £75,000 to further strengthen the Council's cyber security position, helping to reduce the risk of and improving the Council's ability to recover from a successful ransomware attack. The funding will support the further application of cloud-based technologies and solutions, complementing resource planning and prioritisation proposals to improve the resilience of the Council services. Finally, a partner to support the development of the new website and to provide hosting and ongoing support has now been appointed. A number of workshops have been run with core programme team and colleagues from council services to explore, search and navigate ideas, website functions, as well as thoughts around look, feel and branding. During December, the feedback from the workshops will be turned into mock-ups of website pages to elicit further feedback, which will inform the creation of the new website during the first quarter of 2023. Training for colleagues involved in the creation of content for the new website has been delivered. Training is focused on how to prepare simple, concise and accessible content for a transactional focused website likely to be accessed by many items, especially a smartphone, and appropriate for the national average reading age of 9 years old. Approximately 90 colleagues from across all council services accepted the challenge with an immediate focus on creating content for the most views website content on the council's existing website. To take any questions, Leader.
Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to ask about access for this on smartphones. Many people do not have any kind of protection on their smartphone. And I'm a bit concerned about the ability of people accessing from abroad, and I'm assuming those countries would be limited.
For whatever devices people use is actually up to themselves to prepare their own safety. So it's not down to the council. What we are prepared to do is to make sure that the council website is protected so that we can't get infiltrated by ransomware and so forth, and people cannot get details of our users to be able to use outside. So smartphones and computers are exactly the same, that people should get their own safety and safety wear for whatever they're using.
Chairman, if there's no further questions, we'll move on to page 18, and which is welfare services. Well, as you can see, Robert Reid is not with us tonight. He's been quite ill. He's had a serious heart operation, and he's recovering well, but he's still some way before he can come back. So what we've done in the meantime, Rita and myself have picked up this portfolio. I've been doing the formal work and Rita's been doing the hard work behind it. So I will just introduce Rita to go through the points that are raised in the report.
Thank you. Good evening once again. Figures for the collection of council tax and business rates can be found on page 18. The council is on track to achieve the collection target of 98% by the end of the financial year, but due to the impact of cost of living pressures, this may be more difficult to achieve. Information relating to customer services can be found within the table on page 18. Benefits. New claims are being received and an average take 19 days to process, and changes within an average of 4 days. Additional staff are being recruited and should be in place in the new year. Welfare support is continuing to be provided to communities through working with partners and voluntary organisations. Support can be accessed at a number of warm hubs across the district. Discretionary housing benefit payments. Since April, 132 applications have been processed. The cost equates to 59% of our budget for the year. Disabled Facilities Grant. Work is underway to complete as many adaptations as possible as we move into the final 6 months of the current contract. To date, 67% of the annual target the annual budget has been spent on adaptations. The actual amounts for both of these services are contained within the report. Building better opportunities. This project ceases in March 2023 and there will be no new sign-ups after December the 31st. The function of BBO is explained in the report. Homelessness. Sadly, there has been an increase in homeless cases where the situation is an emergency resulting in some people sleeping rough. Between December the 1st and December the 12th, 16 homeless cases, which includes 5 families with children, have been dealt with. 3 cases relate to fleeing domestic abuse and others were due to relationship breakdowns. It's proving more difficult to find accommodation We continue to source housing through social landlords, the private sector and temporary accommodation providers. There has also been a spike in applications to our housing register. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone involved in all of these services and to thank them for their hard work and continuing dedication. Thank you. If there are any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
No questions. We'll move on to last but by no means least, community service. Councillor Len Bates.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want to start off with leisure services. And following the completion of works at the Penkridge Leisure Centre, refurbishment programme has now started at both Womben and Cheslin Hay Leisure Centres, and both will benefit from an upgraded entrance, reception area, swimming pool and changing rooms. And the swimming pool promenade, I'm not too sure on that one. The work for both sites will continue to early 2023, and every effort has been made to ensure the facilities continue to operate normally as possible to minimise the disruption to customers. Penkridge and Consell Swim Academies are now operating well due to the refurbishment work that has taken place, both at Cheslin Hay and Womben Leisure Centres. The Swim Academy will restart very soon as works are completed. The pools will reopen. Cheslin Hay is expected to be early to mid-January 23 and Womben at the end of March 2023. The leisure centres have run a promotion throughout November to generate sales to increase income. At this time, some 289 memberships have been taken up, which, considering the reasonable or the recent refurbishment, it's very encouraging to get these numbers back. I want to talk about emergency planning. It's not something I normally talk about, but there's been an awful lot going on. And operationally, this has been a very busy time so far this year. And in June, we've got the Jubilee celebrations. In July and August, we've got the Commonwealth Games. In September, Operation London Bridge. And then a business continuity plan. And in November, the work around avian flu, which has increased in our area during the past weeks, alongside planning for concurrent events such as winter planning, flooding, cyber-related incidents, and health-related incidents. And I want to talk to you about a letter that I sent. It dates back to March, and this was to DEFRA regarding green waste and whether we were going to be able to continue to charge for green waste. And some 9 months later, I've now received a reply from Rebecca Pow MP, Department for Environmental, Food, Rural Affairs. I won't read it in detail, but she does say, Councillor Bates will be pleased to know that following his representation and those from other councils and from local government associations, that DEFRA has no plans to stop councils charging for garden waste collections. I know that a number of the officers are very pleased about that. There's one on my right-hand side here. Thank you. So moving on from that, I want to pick up on climate change. And as you know, it's part of my portfolio and it's been going along at quite a pace. And I just want to bring you up to date. The Council's progress on climate change action plan was reported to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee at the start of October. And there were some lively discussions took place at that time with members and the progress was noted by all. And steps have been taken to reduce climate change in South Staffordshire. And as a result, we had an event with the landowners of the Bradford Estates and approximately 100 people represented business and local authorities at that meeting. And there were various groups, environmental campaigners attended the half day, and it was a very good networking session at the Woodlands Farm, Weston-under-Lizard. And I think that's something that we can build on. And just to highlight how Staffordshire was named as net zero leader by Western Power Distribution earlier this year, and Bradford Estates and their partners are now working to protect the ecology. And in closing, I'd just like to say a big thank you to Mark Jenkins and his team for the work that they do. Thank you. That completes my report.
Are there any questions?
If there's no more questions, Mr. Chairman, that ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lees. We'll now move to item 7 on the agenda, whereby we now turn to page 29 of today's documents. We have the report from the chairman of committees giving a brief update to council on what has taken place in their committee since the last council meeting. If any chairman, you have all these documents before you, if any chairman wishes to speak and add anything, please indicate now. Councillor Michel.
Thank you, Chairman. It's already been mentioned by the leader, Councillor Lees, but I'd like to also just add my thanks to the finance team for the work they've put in, and not just the letter, the comments that the auditors who, they see a lot of councils, and they speak exceptionally high of the team here and the speed and efficiency that they produce whatever is asked for, and that's the reason that they're the first to be to have a successful audit letter. So thanks again to the team.
Yes, thank you for that, Councillor Michel. Very well made point. We have some cause to be proud of that outcome. Any other questions? Okay, if there are no further questions, I have to move on to item 8. This item is to amend appointments to the standards subcommittees. The proposal is that Councillor Bond and Councillor John Raven change places as set out in the agenda. And do we have a proposal for this?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to propose that Councillor Bond and Councillor Raven change places as set out in your agenda.
Thank you. And a seconder?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to second that.
Members, do you agree with these appointments? That is enough. Okay. Thank you for that. That takes us on to item number 9, which is referred to at page 33 of your book. It is a joint report of the Cabinet members for Planning and Business Enterprise and Welfare Services. Can I call on the Cabinet member for Planning and Business Enterprise, Councillor Mason, to present the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope by the time we get to the end of this, you haven't got too many questions, because most of them are going to be answered by the gentleman who's recovering from his hospital visit. I'd just like to draw your attention to a couple of items in there. 4.1, this strategy for 2023 to 2027 builds on what was our previous strategy, which ran from 2018 to 22. And Councillor Heseltine has outlined some of the successes in her report on behalf of Councillor Reid. But 4.2 actually does demonstrate that during that period we have managed to deliver 470 affordable homes, over 100 bungalows secured on sites allocated in the local plan, more than 400 properties adapted through the Disabled Facilities Grant, over 1,100 residents supported through Warmer Homes, and 3 specialist housing schemes completed, providing 124 homes with a mixture of market and affordable. 4.3 is where we're actually extending what we're already doing on the previous scheme. It refreshes the strategy for our enabling role in providing housing and ensuring individuals in need of assistance receive timely and practical advice, but it also gives us an opportunity to recognise the important role of our housing stock in the environment and more specifically the climate change agenda. Residents of existing homes must be assisted in making their properties more energy efficient. 4.4, we are focusing on 4 priorities in the new strategy: ensuring the right types of housing are provided in the right locations to meet the local need, strengthen the role of both the district's existing and new housing stock in addressing the climate change emergency, adapting existing homes and future-proofing new homes to positively contribute to the health, well-being and independence of residents, and to prevent and alleviate homelessness. The full strategy was subject to public consultation, and as a result of that consultation, we did have 4 responses. All of them were carefully considered, and you can see those in Appendix 2, which is attached to this report. However, the actual strategy itself is attached to Appendix 1, and the recommendation at 2.1 is that Appendix 1 of this report, which is the strategy, the South Staffordshire Housing and Homelessness Strategy 2023 to 2027, be adopted by the Council, and I am proposing that Cabinet supports that recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Do we have a seconder?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to second that and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding that report? Does anyone else wish to speak to commence a debate? I think not. Well, thank you very much, members. Is it your wish then that the recommendation as set out by Councillor Mason be carried? Those in favour, please may I have a show of hands? Right, thank you, members. I believe that is unanimous, and thereby the motion is carried. We now turn to item 10, which you will find on page 61, and the report of the Chairman of the Standards and Resources Committee on members' allowances. Trust I have your attention. Can I call on the Chairman of the Standards and Resources Committee, Councillor Bond, to present his report? Councillor Bond, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. As you will see in your papers, there is quite a comprehensive report on the from the Standards Committee regarding members' allowances. So I don't intend to go into any great detail on this. I would just remind members that some 3.5 years ago, we set out to establish a scheme for members' allowances that was robust and would not need to be continually revisited over a period of time by the Independent Remuneration Panel. And I believe that the report in front of you sort of supports that. The panel have met on 2 occasions, and members, all 49 members, were given the opportunity to respond to a questionnaire about the members' allowances scheme. As you can see in the papers, 8 members responded to that. So it can be assumed that the majority of members were quite satisfied with the scheme as it stands. The recommendations were presented to the Standards and Resources Committee, and we discussed those at our last meeting, which was just a couple of 3 weeks ago. And the Standards and Resources Committee fully support the recommendations of the independent panel. In a nutshell, what the panel is saying is that the scheme is still relevant, it's still robust, that the mechanism that was established some time back, 3 years ago, whereby the members' allowances are tied to any increases on the chief executive's salary, that should remain in place. That is again a recommendation. The panel can be called back in to review the scheme at any time on a resolution of this council. So it's recommended that continues also. I will attempt to answer any questions if members have questions, but before I make a proposal, I'd like to make sure that we do record our thanks as a council to the members of the Independent Remuneration Panel who give up their time freely to do this on behalf of the council. So I'd like to thank those members. Chairman, I would like to propose that this council adopts the recommendations of the Independent Remuneration Panel from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Do we have a seconder?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to second that proposal.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to speak? I think Councillor Bond has already asked about questions, but of course there is a possibility of speaking with a view to a debate. I see no hands. Thank you so much for that. Therefore, I must again ask you formally, is it your wish that the recommendation is carried? Those in favour, can I have a show of hands, please? Again, we have a unanimous vote. The motion is thereby carried. Thank you. We now turn to item 11 on the agenda, and that takes us to page 95 of of page 95 and the report of the Corporate Director of Finance and Resources on capital strategy. Can I call upon the Corporate Director, Mr. Shakespeare, to present the report? Thank you, Mr. Shakespeare.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. The report before you sets out the performance against the capital programme for the 21-22 financial year. On the 9th of April 2019, Council approved the capital strategy that was in place from 2019-20 through to 2021-22. This is the final year of reporting against that strategy, as full Council approved the new capital strategy in place from April of this year. The capital strategy provides an overview of how capital expenditure, capital financing and treasury management activities contribute to the provision of council services and how associated risk is managed. It also helps set the long-term context in which capital expenditure and investment decisions are made in a sustainable way. Taking each section of the report in turn, Section 5 sets out the Council's assets as at the 31st of March 2022 per the Statement of Accounts. You'll note that the majority of assets are contained within land and buildings. Section 6 summarises the capital expenditure against our Council priorities. All 11.5 million of capital spend met at least one Council priority, and all 4 Council priorities were addressed through aspects of the capital programme. Section 7 summarises new acquisitions during the period, of which I can confirm there were none. Section 8 focuses solely on our commercial assets and links strongly to our commercial asset strategy. You'll note the makeup of income generated and that a significant proportion of our income is generated from industrial premises that we lease. However, we do have a diversified portfolio, including the community hub, further commercial office space, along with the country park and our park home site. Section 9 reviews the condition assessment of the estate for asset management purposes and makes allowance for how this liability will be met. It's estimated that around £1.5 million worth of spend is required to maintain the income generating assets in their current condition. The assessment is focused on a 10-year time horizon rather than the life of the asset. Finally, Section 10 details the Sync Fund that was established to help support the investment programme. In conclusion, members, the report demonstrates that capital expenditure and investment decisions continue to be made in a sustainable way, underpinning council objectives and with relevant risk and reward considered for all investment or disinvestment decisions. I'm happy to take any questions.
Do we have a proposer for accepting the report?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, following Mr. Shakespeare's detailed analysis of the report, I propose that members approve the 2022 annual report against the capital strategy.
Thank you. And a seconder, please.
I'm more than happy to second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Heseltine. I'll ask again, are there any questions for Mr. Shakespeare? Anyone wish to discuss, raise a debate? That being the case, I must ask you if it is your wish that the recommendation is carried. Those in favour, please may I again have a show of hands. I'm informed that that is unanimous and I'm grateful to members. The motion is thereby carried. Thank you. This takes us to item 12 and we turn to page 109 and the report of the further report of the Corporate Director of Finance and Resources regarding a proposed loan to a parish council. Can I call upon Mr. Shakespeare to present the report once again? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The council was recently approached by Hatherton Parish Council, who wish to receive a loan from the District Council. In accordance with our constitution, council approval is needed before that loan can be granted. For context, the parish undertook a capital investment programme over the last year that has cost significantly more than they originally expected. While the work has now been complete, the parish does face a short-term cash flow issue. As such, the parish is requesting a loan of £10,000 repayable in 6 months' time from the date of issue. Officers are recommending an interest rate be charged to the parish of 4% on the loan, which means that the district is not subsidising the loan and we're no worse off in making those funds available to the parish. And that would amount to around £200 in interest payable. The repayment of the loan will correlate to the cash flow from precept income that the parish will receive in that time horizon. And happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Shakespeare. I see no hands raised. Do we have a proposer to accept this report?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I propose that we grant a loan to Hatherton Parish Council.
Thank you. And a seconder?
Yes, I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone else wish to speak? That being the case, is it your wish, members, that the recommendation is carried? Those in favour, please again, may I have a show of hands? Yes, I think once again we have unanimous. The motion is thereby carried and I thank you. This brings us to item 13, the Chairman's announcements, which will take place in two parts. First of all, I would like to reflect upon partly on the year to date. It's been a wonderful time in many ways to be chairman of this council. I won't go into the detail, indeed some of the issues have already been mentioned by Councillor Bates. At this time of year, I didn't know this until it happened, that the civic round, as you might say, the various activities and events which I, with my consort, are invited to attend, focus largely on carol evenings or carol concerts, should I say. It's so interesting because once you've attended several of these, and it reminds you so much of primary school, when you learn the words of the carols off pat, you didn't actually have to consult the hymn sheet, as it were, or carol sheet. And I've very nearly reached that situation again. I've been to so many carol concerts and rehearsed the famous carols so often that I'm confident again in such things. The other thing I would like to mention, members, is that there is a thoroughly outstanding social event taking place on January the 27th. And that, of course, is an evening held in celebration of Scotland's famous bard, Robert Burns. And I would urge each and every one of you to attend this amazing event. I may say that myself and my wife, my consort, have some considerable experience in running such events. And one of the things about which I have no doubt, everybody leaves the event saying, hey, that was pretty good. I enjoyed that. Yes, we do have a piper. Yes, we will have the haggis. And yes, I will be thrusting the knife into the haggis in accordance with tradition. So I do hope you'll be able to join myself and others on the 27th of January at the Wergs Golf Club. Thank you very much indeed. Can I now ask Mr. Chairman at this start?